living a full and well life is put together, authentic.
We feel it.
Take care of ourselves. Hello, and welcome back to the Wishing You Well podcast. I'm Amy.
And I'm Catherine. And today on Wishing You Well, we are interviewing Bianca Lysette. She is a manifestation and mindset coach, and we talk all about, of course, manifestation. But if you are someone who's a skeptic, don't navigate away from this podcast just yet, because you might change your mind. I have to say, I sure did. I really
Catherine
did.
fell face first into manifesting.
Yes. This is really, really interesting what everything Bianca has to say in terms of how she got to becoming a manifestation coach and what it really is versus what you think it is and what you're seeing everywhere on social media, all over the internet. It's not like that. I promise. It's really, really cool. And you're gonna like it.
You're going to learn a lot. I sure did, as someone who knew very little and truthfully is a bit of a skeptic. So we look forward to you hearing this episode. Stay tuned.
All right. Well, Bianca, before we get into our conversation with you about you, we do want to hear about your self-care, how you're doing, what is self-care looking like for you? Let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like because, being an entrepreneur in general, it's very high pressure. There's a lot of stress. You can kind of get caught up in the mundane task, and it's really hard to pull yourself away. So I prioritize every 2 weeks to go to the spa. And because I'm here in Orlando, Florida, the Four Seasons is my absolute favorite. And I just did my routine there on Sunday, and I just got like a Ayurvedic type of massage and a facial. I was there for about 5 hours, and it really just completely helped me reset.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. That's like a decadent, self-care treat. I love that. How did you get started with kind of adding that into a routine?
Yeah, so I actually used to suffer from anxiety, really, really bad. And I got to the point where, once I got my energy right and I've gone through acupuncture and hypnosis, I had to figure out a way to be able to withdraw so I don't get that buildup and get the anxiety and panic attacks. And I started off, just getting a massage here and there. And I was like, oh, this is great. This is really relaxing. This is what I needed. And then little by little, I was just trying to find a way to stick to it and add more to where I feel like I'm actually doing something that benefits, other issues that I have, like my skin problems, not just getting the relaxation. But once I found what I liked, I really just stuck to it. And I was like, as long as I do this every 2 weeks, I'll be unstoppable.
And have you found that? Has it had that desired impact for you?
Oh, absolutely. And I cannot recommend it enough.
That's amazing.
And this for you, this is a sustainable treat that you're having. Like, it is every 2 weeks. Is it a standing appointment, or is it just like oh my gosh, like it's coming around again, or like my anxiety is coming up again, I have to schedule that. It's been about 2 weeks, or is it just like, you're going every other Sunday?
Well, for me, just so I could make that commitment, and once I knew like I can absolutely afford this, it's just a matter of taking the time out and going. I created a standing appointment, so every 2 weeks they expect me.
Wow. Awesome.
Lovely.
What better place than the Four Seasons?
Exactly.
That's so awesome. Well, I know we're going to get into more of your journey, your story in a bit. So I'm excited to hear more about that. But before that, Catherine, how about you? I know it's been a couple of weeks since we've checked in. How are you? How's your self-care?
It has been a few weeks, and I think it's kind of gone up and down. I think right now I'm at a point where I feel pretty steady in my day-to-day self-care. And at the same time, I do have this like huge change upon me. I'm moving into my house, and that is a big stressor. I think like at this moment, as I'm speaking, it doesn't feel like a big stressor, maybe because I'm kind of checked out because I'm checked in here, and it feels really good to like not be thinking about having to pack and all the gross and yucky things about moving. But I will say that I have been thinking a little bit more ahead to fall, Catherine, and more so 1 year, or my daughter's like first birthday, Catherine. And so, I can't believe like I'm saying out loud, it's like insane that she's almost a year old. And I could get more into that. However, what I am trying to spit out is that that I have been pretty much attached to her ever since she got here, and I have been like fortunate enough to nurse her for the 10 plus months now that she's been alive, and I've decided to start weaning her, and that is two reasons. Two reasons? Two event reasons anyway. Other reasons, namely just like I kind of want some parts of me back and some independence. But I do have two things coming up that I really want that independence for. One is my cousin's wedding, and one is one of my best friend's bachelorette parties. And I was dabbling for a really long time whether or not to go to the bachelorette, and then for the wedding, like I've gone to weddings with like having nursed my daughter, and I have in-laws that are like super accommodating, and we kind of made this system up of like how I can still nurse her and get to the party and like do all this stuff. And I was like, oh, I just want to go to the party. I'm just like ready to go and do it. And I know it's going to be like a really bittersweet thing to start weaning her and like get to the point where that's not happening anymore. But I booked the bachelorette flight, so it's happening, and I'm really excited. I'm really like scared also because it's also the first time I'm like leaving her for 2 days, so there's a lot going into that. But the self-care part is that I booked my flights. Long story short, TLDR.
Yeah. Wow, there's so much there, and definitely I could hear what you're saying around it being bittersweet. So when are these flights? Like when?
It is like Halloween weekend.
Okay, so a couple months.
Yeah, so they're a couple months away. And it does need to kind of be like a slow process, but like yeah, I just I was thinking, I was going back and forth for a while, and like I not so much about the weaning part. Like I really had decided that I wanted to stop breastfeeding her at a year, but the do I go or do I not go? That part, because there's the part of me that's just like, I think so much more anxious to leave her than she probably is for me to leave her. Like she's gonna be fine with my in-laws. She is. So I think it's more so me.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to updates on that part of your journey. Very much so. Wow, I can't believe it's been almost a year.
Yeah, I know. Wow. All right. Well, Amy, how about you? How are you? How's your self-care? You just came back from a vacation. Please
I did.
Give us some sort of check-in around that too.
Yes. So I was away for 15 days, which was really nice. I was in Mexico, and I don't know I don't remember how much detail I've gone into in the past around like my more recent vacations, but they haven't been very much vacation. They've been more like working from another location, just with things going on within the business that need my attention and I can't really turn off from. And so this was the first time in a really long time, maybe over a year for sure, that I had like a full break for the most part, with the exception of some podcast recording that I did with my husband. But so that was really nice. And one of the goals I had for this vacation was to like have fun. We had that fun check-in right before vacation. So like my main goal was like, I want to go in, I want to have fun, I want to be fun Amy. I just like want to embrace that side of myself. And I did. And so that felt really good and really restful in its own way. And then about halfway through our trip, I got sick. And so that brings us to today. I'm still like not feeling at 100%, feeling way better than I did. And I think what I'm wrestling with self-care is like how much grace to give myself, like how much to listen, how to interpret what my body is telling me, like how to balance that, like what my body wants versus what it might need. And I'm like at that point in me feeling like unwell where it's like, ugh, like my body needs a vegetable. And, but I like the thought of like eating vegetables is like giving me the ick. And like, so what do I balance there? Like I feel like my body really would benefit from movement, but like I'm tired and I feel a little like nauseous. So like, how do I balance this? And I feel like this is the struggle that I'm often in because I usually choose like just push through, like just go, like just do the thing that you need, even if you don't want to. And so I just before we started recording had been talking with Catherine about it and like, this is where I'm at. Like, I don't know how to find this balance. And she, of course, it's not black or white when it comes to all of these things. And so she was very helpful in reminding me of that. Um, so all of that to say, I'm really trying to find a balance between both and figuring out like what I really need and not push myself too hard, like not fall into those old patterns, but also like give my body what it's telling me it wants, which is probably to go a little easier and be a little softer with myself than usual. So I will update next week, but I do want to try to get back into like some of my typical routine starting today, like going to the gym but maybe not like sprinting on the treadmill, maybe just, walking. Would be a
Well, and
good place to start.
Well, I know how hard that could be when you do a workout like Orange Theory and you're like challenged to get your heart rate at a certain place and get into certain zones. And like, it's hard to kind of like tune out of that and like just listen to yourself a little bit, even though it is for you. It's like still you're like in it for the class and like that.
Oh, sure.
So I can see.
And that competitiveness and like competing against yourself and knowing that I could do more and better, like I really grapple with, which, it's not fair. It's not fair for me to compare me today to me, 2 weeks ago when I was feeling great. So I'm just going to try to remember
and also,
that.
Think about it like this. If you were to take a break from working out for 10 days without getting sick, coming back into working out, you're not going to do whatever you were able to do 10 days ago, like just naturally. Sorry.
Don't tell me that.
So add on the fact that you're still not feeling well, like you're going to have to bring down the miles per hour a lot.
Okay. Well, maybe. Well, this is maybe a good segue into our conversation today because I know nothing really truly very little about manifestation. And I know that will be a big part of what we're talking about today with you, Bianca. But I have this pattern of going on vacation and getting sick. And is there a way to manifest a healthier outcome of vacation? Because this sucks. This is like a true pattern. And Catherine can attest to like literally every time I go away, I get sick. So I'm very, I don't typically make, maybe that's not true. Sometimes I make these conversations with guests all about me. I promise I won't do that. But I have so many questions about manifestation and how we can use it and can I use it for this?
Of course. Absolutely. And that is great that you realize that that's a pattern because that's also like a mindset thing and those things are hand in hand. And really, before I even go too deep into it, it really comes down to, is there any past experiences that you've had that have made this pattern stick? And it's diving into that and really understanding yourself, your childhood trauma, certain triggers that you have that can be contributing to this pattern. And once you dig deep and really understand those aspects of yourself and your life, then you can move that out the way, clear your blocks, clear those things that are holding you back, and do the fun manifestation part of manifesting this healthy, enjoyable vacation.
Damn, Bianca, once you said that, I was like, yep, I know.
Yeah. Yeah, that one connected some things for you.
Okay, okay. Let's fully get into it. So you are going to talk to us about all sorts of things today that as I said, I'm not an expert in. Catherine's not an expert in. We have a lot of curiosity around in terms of manifestation and mindset, and all the work that you do. But give us a little background. Tell us and our listeners about yourself and kind of what brought you into this space.
Absolutely. So I started off knowing that I wanted to be an entrepreneur from the moment I had the chance to enter the workforce and really figure out how I was going to make a living. I just knew that I wanted to take this path of working for myself. So that's exactly what I did. And I was very fortunate to have success in the beginning. I created a virtual executive assistant business, and I was doing this remotely. I was making almost six figures right off the bat within the first year, going very well. And I was very young at the time. I had just turned 22. And then all of a sudden, everything flopped. My assistants quit. Clients said they didn't need me anymore. And it was like I was at square one. Um, I had no business background before this. I did not grow up in a very privileged household. I had a Latina singles mom, and I just really figured it out myself. So I think that probably contributed to my flop, but also a lot with my mindset and things of that nature. So when I got to this point, I moved back in with my aunt. I was staying in her guest room. I was just at a super low point in my life, and I was just giving up because I was like, "There's no way. Like maybe I'm not meant to do this." And one day my cousin came over and she said, "You really need to check out this documentary called The Secret. It's all about the law of attraction and it can change your life." And I was like, "Yeah, right. Like that's BS. There's no way." But I have no job. I have no income. What else am I going to do? I might as well watch Netflix, right? So I watched it and I was hooked the immediate second. Like as soon as I got to the end, I was like, I have to make this work because this sounds like magic. There's no way like I can screw this up. Um, so I spent the next few years spending every dollar that I had going to seminars, learning from experts, researching this, playing around with methods. And from there, it pretty much transformed my entire life, professionally and personally.
Wow. Okay. Tell us more. Like how? How did you notice it start to like transform your life? How did you notice it showing up in your life?
Yeah, so it was kind of tricky at first because the documentary is a very, very high level overview. And mainly the big idea of that is people are just saying, think positive thoughts and everything will work out. And that's what I was doing, but it wasn't working out. So I actually ended up hiring a coach, a manifestation coach at the time. And they taught me that it's so much more than that. Just focus on the feeling, focus on the little things. Like you're just getting started. So you have to really trick your brain into believing it and knowing that this is possible, because when you first get started you're like, there's no way that I can think about something and I can have it tomorrow. Like it doesn't sound realistic. But as you play with your brain chemistry a little bit more, things start showing up in your reality. There's these odd coincidences that's like, oh my god, I was just thinking about this and here it is. Once I was able to manifest small things, like at one point I was manifesting a free coffee every week at Starbucks. Other times it was like I was finding $10 like on the road or just in my car, like the most random places. And I never carry cash. So it was just even weirder for me. Once I got to that point, I was like, all right, now it's time to bring out the big guns and see what else I can do. And, I don't think this is talked about enough, but as an entrepreneur, you take many different paths before you find out, what's going to not only help you generate income, but bring you purpose and passion. So I went through a couple different phases. I dabbled in real estate a little bit, doing some wholesaling. I have my license, but it was mainly all in all to understand how to invest. So doing this business model again made a lot of money, a lot of success. And then, when I got to the point of I need to be charging for my services instead of just helping people for free, because the whole time while I was going through this journey, people are like, what are you doing? How is this, what is your secret here? Because you're just constantly finding success. I was teaching people these methods and showing them that you have to clear your blocks, going down all of this and not charging for my services. So I was like, it's time for me to just align with my passion, teach people what I know, and really just and drive that all the way through, combined with how I live my life daily using manifestation. And once I did those things, that's when everything just like catapulted me to such a better place in life.
That's amazing. It's so cool that you
Yeah.
like came like started with all these smaller things and they were kind of telling you all these little signs like, hey, you got to try this on a
Yeah.
bigger scale. When you say like you were manifesting these things, like you were manifesting the $10 bill to find, and like you were finding it, like what were you doing to make that happen?
Yeah, talk to us like we're complete
Yeah.
idiots. Like, what does that?
What does it even look like?
Yeah, what does that look like? What
Yeah.
does that sound like?
hmm So the universe works in a funny way, I like to say, because you can ask for something and you will get it in a completely different way, and sometimes 10 times better than you ever thought you could imagine. Something that my coach at the time was teaching me to help me ignite that key trigger my brain, like manifestation works, is focus on the small things. And he's like, just imagine yourself finding a quarter on the ground, heads up. And, I'm a superstitious person on top of that. So I'm like, oh, heads up means good luck. I mean, I don't care about the quarter, but, it's just fun to experience those things. So I was like, okay. He said, for me, meditation works. This doesn't work for everybody, but this is the method that I used. I would meditate 10 minutes a day, and I would focus on the feeling of finding that quarter and just like feeling like I'm lucky, feeling like, things are always working out for me, just having like that good giddy feeling that I get when I see these things. And I did it for about a week straight before it actually happened. And I didn't find the quarter. That's when I found the $10 bill. And I was like, that is insane. So I just kept playing around with like those smaller methods and seeing it come to fruition in such a larger way that at a certain point, I was like, okay, this is just, it doesn't make sense at first. Like you have to experience it, you know? But it really just comes down to having that feeling. You hear a lot of gurus talk about vibration this, vibration that. And really, I just wish they would use the word feeling, because that's all it comes down to. It just comes down to feeling really, really good and like having that natural high on life.
Mm. And it sounds like through the example that you gave, like through a meditation practice, you were able to like cultivate that feeling for yourself, regardless of whether or not you found the heads up quarter or not. And so like you're still inviting kind of joyfulness, giddiness into your life in that way. Again, whether even though maybe the goal, I don't know, is the goal to actually find the thing, or is it about having the experience? Does that make sense?
So, in a sense, if you were trying to manifest something more serious,
Mm-hmm.
such as a new job or, a new client, whatever, that it is more serious of having that thing, right? But the trick is to detach from that and just tell yourself that it's for the experience. Everything that we do on this planet as humans is for the experience. People say, oh, I want to make all this money because I want to live a better life. No, you want to have a better experience. You want to have, more freedom, more options. It's all about the emotion and the feeling at a baseline. So when I was manifesting these things, it was more like I was just enjoying the feeling of it and then detaching from it afterwards and saying, if it happens, it happens. If not, whatever. And that's the best way to get something to manifest fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Being more, as you're saying, kind of attached and invested in the process rather than the outcome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And so is that where like the mindset piece of your work comes in, is in helping people kind of almost like unlearn or dismantle that belief that like our existence is so tied to outcome and what we produce?
In a sense, yes, but it really just depends on the person, because some people come into this and they're super open minded, not very much childhood trauma. Like they've grown up believing that anything is possible, even though they don't know much about this work. And then in other senses, I've had clients who are like, there's no way this is impossible. This is just complete abysmal. And you have to know your beliefs at a core. You have to really try to figure that out and bring it out. So in a sense, I know, do we need to work on mindset? Do we need to shift things? What are your triggers? And really just customize that to the person.
This is all fascinating. And I'm wondering if like, is it possible to have been manifesting without knowing it? Because like as you're saying this, I'm like thinking back to something specific and I was like, wait, did I manifest this? because
Yeah.
because
Oh my
especially when you
gosh.
said like it's when you like it's like once you let go of that outcome that it's like that's when it really comes to fruition. And I'm thinking about how like right after I had my daughter, I've talked about this before, where like right after I had my daughter, I felt like super clear and really detached from kind of the rest of the world. And in that really felt like the least anxious I've ever felt before. And I kind of got to this like point where I like wasn't doing all the checking the boxes like that I had been doing all my life. Like, okay, I really want to get married and I want to have this wedding that looks like this and I want to have babies and, and then I want to get the house and I want to do this. And like I kind of like pulled back from that and I was able to just really sit in the beauty of where I was. And then I even said out loud to my husband, I remember like pretty recently, like within the last few months, you know, like we're going to find a house whenever we find a house, and like it's going to happen when it happens. And like, to be honest, I'm really happy with where we're at. I'm really happy with our life. I really love this, and it's just going to happen when it does. And then lo and behold, we're moving in this weekend.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that what happened?
No. Yes, that's exactly what happened. And it's great that you're like putting that together. I'm not sure if you've heard this term. Have you guys heard the term quantum physics?
Yeah.
Okay, so quantum physics basically states that everything is one. Everything is entangled with each other. Whether you believe it or not, everything that you want is already yours because time is not, it's not linear. And this is a little harder concept for some people to grab, but science has proven that everything is happening at once. We're just experiencing it in smaller bits and chunks because as humans, we can't grasp the concept of, our life in an instant, but that's pretty much how it's happening. So you already had the house before you knew that you were getting it kind of situation. And this is where quantum physics explains that once you detach from something, once you're not seeking it, it naturally flows to you so much easier. And that's where manifestation comes in. Manifestation is a completely science-backed, researched process. You are manifesting whether you say you don't want to or whether you do want to. The universe doesn't know yes and no. Like it just knows like what you're naturally putting out there. You ever got excited when you were thinking about this house buying process?
Yeah.
Yeah, you had that feeling of like, oh my God, this is going to be so awesome. It's going to be so great, right?
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. In that moment, you created it. And then once you detached, which is the next step of manifestation, the universe is like, okay, she's going to get it. She has no yearning. She has no negative feeling about it. She's going to get it. So that's like the best way I can break it down to make it realistic.
There's some sort of like Buddhism intertwined in there. Like, isn't there something in like Buddhism where it's like like you're not supposed to yearn, like you're not supposed to like want things?
So
I don't know.
I
Maybe
think
that's
that, yeah, no, absolutely. I think that in every religion, there's an aspect of that. In Christianity and Catholicism, it's you're not supposed, it's a sin, to yearn or to crave something. You're just supposed to let God bless you, whatever it is. So this is instilled in every single part of religion, and it's also instilled in quantum physics and science. So to me, it just ties it all together even more how much sense this makes.
Can you manifest bad things? I think this is something that I hear a lot of clients talk about is like, if I spend a lot of time thinking about X, Y or Z, like negative thing happening, am I putting that out there in the universe? And is that what the universe is going to hear? And is that what I'm going to get?
Absolutely. And I hate saying this to people, but you can manifest illnesses. You can manifest death. You can manifest loss. And it's all about your thinking and your mindset. I think maybe about 10 years ago, there was a professor at a university who spent his entire life doing research on odd ways that people die. And when he finally got to the end of his research, he actually died from choking on chewing gum. So there's so many instances like this where people just manifest this horrible sickness because they're so focused on it and they're so worried about it, and they just bring it into their reality. So I think you absolutely can, yes.
Yeah, there's that saying like where your mind goes, your energy flows kind of thing. And it sounds like that's sort of what you're describing here, which is kind of stressful to think about. And so I guess it puts all the more emphasis on like really trying to like be mindful of your thinking and your thought patterns, as you're saying, the blocks that exist, all of that.
Yeah, but at the same time, we are human. We are going to have negative days. We are going to have negative thoughts. And it's really important to not resist that, but to feel that motion, feel it all the way through, face it head on and go through those emotions, but don't sit in them, don't wallow in them, don't worry, like let it pass, because we will have our good times, we will have our bad times. It's totally normal.
Can
There's some
you
acceptance there.
Yeah.
can you tell us about some success stories from some of your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So I recently worked with a woman who's here in Orlando. She's an entrepreneur as well. She's a real estate investor, and she felt like she just could not get to a higher limit. She was around the six-figure mark, just not going over 500,000. And although, that's super great to her, she still felt like a failure. She's like, she's not growing. It's just, it wasn't a good spot. So we did a deep dive with her, and what her issue was is she was suffering from migraines, like really, really intense migraines. And it's not that it was hindering her work, but it was hindering her as a person. She wasn't enjoying life. She had no motivation to be social, to, enjoy family time or anything. So what I recommended for her was for her to do 10 sessions of acupuncture. And after these acupuncture sessions, I wouldn't say she was cured from her headaches, but it went from being, about like 10 headaches a week to like 3 or 4. And even those headaches, she said, were much more tolerable. It was just put her in a much happier place. And then once we moved on to doing her tailored manifestation methods, about 4 weeks in, she was already getting like multiple deals at crazy low prices. She was seeing profit come in from old deals that she was owed money. It was just like all of a sudden the stars completely aligned for her.
Wow. What do you think it was about the like what was the association that you or she was seeing around like the decrease in migraines and then having this kind of success?
Yeah, so I think as humans, and again, this is proven by science, but we store trauma in our body. She had a very, very rough childhood, a very rough early adulthood, and there was no healing process there. And I think that was just stored as stress in her brain because she had gone through multiple CT scans, she's seen multiple doctors. There was no genuine explanation as to why she was having these type of headaches. With things like acupuncture and hypnosis and energy treatments, it just attacks a level of the body that you can never understand, that you cannot see. We all have an energetic field around us. And it's not something that a doctor can just go in and say, I'm going to give you a prescription for this energetic field. That's not how it works. You have to approach it in a much different way. And have you guys experienced acupuncture or heard of acupuncture?
Mm-hmm.
Heard of it for sure. We actually had a guest who talked to us all about acupuncture, especially when it comes to fertility. Actually, she's located in Florida also.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
yeah, I'm fascinated. I've never done it, but it does seem
Same.
amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's a little odd at first because I don't like needles, but it's just so helpful because they put very, very small needles on certain pressure points in the body. And these pressure points are all linked to specific things: stress, anxiety, headaches, whatever it is. So for her, when she was going through this and relieving those certain pressure points, we're not sure what it did or how it did it, but it slowly over time decreased her headaches. And she really started to notice after like the fourth session, she's like, I didn't even realize how much I'm not having headaches now because I'm just busy living my life, enjoying life more. Like I have more motivation to spend time with family, more motivation to go out and do things, even by myself. So I thought that was just incredible. And as time progressed and she stuck with this, the results were just absolutely astounding. She was able to live a completely different life.
Wow. Amazing. So how
Um,
long do you typically work with people? Like I don't know if I imagine like us, like as therapists, like it varies from person to person, but like what is a typical amount of time that you might work with someone?
Yeah, and it definitely does depend on the person and how much inner work they need or, where they're at in their life. But it's usually anywhere from like 6 to 12 weeks. And that's just because I break it down in like a 3-part phase. And the first phase is self-discovery. It's really diving into you, seeing what your blocks are, what your childhood was like, things of that nature. And then the second phase is where we do the tailored manifestation methods, and we're tracking the little things here. We're creating the small wins, tricking your brain chemistry into really believing in these methods. And then at the end is where we're doing like the big stuff. That's where you're seeing the major results. That's where we're like following up, making sure everything is sticking, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I imagine, because you're talking about like, shifting essentially the way our brain functions, like that this has to be a practice that people maintain, like after the, 6+ weeks, it's not like done, right? Like they need to continue to do some work on their own, or no?
Yeah, so I guess it depends. Let's say we work together, right? We get through the 12 weeks, you've created everything you wanted to create, and you're like, what now? It just depends. Are you content in your life? Are you content in the space that you're in? Or do you want to create more? Because I wouldn't say like once you stop, everything just goes to shit. Like it's not like that at all. Everything you've created, all the work you've done inside and out, it's there. It's good. You're going to be glowing, internally regardless. It's your choice if you want to continue to grow more, if you want to create more, or if you want to just take a step back and say, I'll do more when it's needed. But the work that you've done is going to stick with you and it's there forever.
It's very affirming.
It's powerful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly. What do you like when you get to the manifestation portion of those segments that you break up? What does like I don't even know how to ask the question. Like how, I don't know, like how are you framing some of the questions that you're guiding them through, or like how do you
How do I create the custom methods?
how do you tailor it to them? Like meditation works for you, but like and like acupuncture worked for this other client. Like what are some other things that you might suggest, or like things that you might talk about with your client in those sessions?
Yeah, so this really kind of happens in the self-discovery phase because it comes down to discovering what your life was like as far back as you can remember. Of course, childhood has a lot to do with it. Of course, your teenager, adult years, all of that past stuff, but also, what's going on now? What is your schedule? Do you have kids? What does your time look like in between work? Do you work from home? All of those things are going to help me know what method is going to work best for you, just because and I'm sure you guys have heard, there's just tons and tons of information about there about multiple different things that you can do. But if you're doing the wrong thing, like let's say I tell you try meditating, but you have 5 kids and you work a 9 to 5 and you're a single mom, whatever it is, there's no, I mean, realistically, like people are like, oh, you have to make the time. That's not going to happen. There's no way you're going to sit down for 10 minutes and you're not going to hear your toddler knocking at the door because they want a snack. It's things like that you have to really take into consideration. And also it comes down to the person's personality. Not a lot of people are the type that can close their eyes and they can see an orange. That does not happen for everybody. You'd be surprised how many clients I have that are like,
I just
I can't.
learned that. I'm so
It's a
surprised.
thing. It's
Like
a
you
thing.
close your eyes, you
Yeah.
don't see anything. What?
Yeah.
I,
It's like 30% of the world or something like that. But it's it can really make manifesting a big pain if you're not able to, see that. So I had to really get creative and come up with ways that like pull that out of somebody that has, not the ability to visualize. So, it's taking all of those things into consideration and all of the methods that there are out there and just putting the dots together to give you the most success.
what do you say? Okay, as much as we hear, as much as like just people hear about manifestation in general, it's sometimes it like gets a bad rap, and I think that there are also like a lot of skeptics out there around manifestation. What would you say to those skeptics, or like how do you turn someone over?
Yeah, and believe it or not, I actually get like client calls that are like, I don't know why I'm speaking with you because I don't believe in what you do, but and it just comes down to showing people that the science side of this, right? Because I feel like what's in mainstream media about manifestation is they put it too close to psychics, tarot cards, all of
Mm.
these things that I don't want to downplay that industry at all, but all of these things that are sometimes made up or sometimes a scam or, not legitimate. Um, Especially after watching The Secret and following people like Dr. Joe Dispenza, Lisa Nichols, these people who have showed a different side of this. that's where I try to explain. I always try to lean more to that side, just because when I first found out about this, I was probably the biggest skeptic ever. I tried to find every single way to prove this method wrong, and I didn't. And I spent years. So I'm pretty convinced, in the science side of it, that's where the brain chemistry comes in. That's where I'm able to explain certain things that create that trigger, that create new neurons in your brain, and believing this, because it's so much more than just thinking positive thoughts. I can explain every single step to you on the science side, and it would convert you in about 10 minutes.
I think you, no, you did that earlier. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it makes so much sense. And again, I think there's an overlap here around like in our work too. A lot of what we work on with our clients is kind of figuring out essentially like what was maybe imprinted on them, or what they learned passively or actively through, their upbringing and things like that. And those, as you're saying, like they do create these strong neural pathways, these connections in their brain that are so hardwired. And so much of what we are doing in therapy is trying to rewire the brain. And it does take time. I tend to lean the neuroscience route too, for people that are like, still like, what is therapy and how can it help me? And why does it sometimes take a while? And, having to help people realize like, oh, we're actually rewiring your brain here. And that doesn't just happen overnight. So I like the science route myself. But I guess this might be, again, I'm such an idiot when it comes to this stuff, but do people come, like, I'm thinking about, this is maybe fresh on my mind because I just watched an episode of Sex and the City where Charlotte goes to a tarot card reader, and I've never done tarot. I don't know, but like, you go to this person and you essentially say, well, you have a question for them, or sometimes people come to therapy and are like, there's this specific thing that I want addressed. And then there are some people that come to therapy and that are sort of like, I don't really know why I'm here, but I know that like something's off, and like, I just want to understand myself more. Like, do you tend to get people that like know specifically like what they might want to manifest, so to speak? Or do you get people that are like, I feel stuck and I want to try this? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely work with clients on both ends of that. And that's why on my website, you'll see a lot of things mentioning creating your version of a dream life, because not a lot of people know what that looks like for them. And that's my job, to help you figure that out, to help pull that out of you. The brain, and I'm sure you hear this, but the brain works on repetition.
Mm-hmm.
So, once you're consistently going over the same things, like you said, it might take some time, but eventually it's going to come out, because you're constantly tapping on that specific neuron in the brain that it's part of the subconscious mind, I should say.
Right. Yeah. Focused
Yeah.
repetition on a thing is how we learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we often need to give our brain something different to focus on and repeat in order to shift and learn something different. Go ahead.
I was literally reading this morning. I get these emails weekly about like, oh, your baby at week blah blah blah, which, like, okay, we're not measuring her at weeks anymore, but sure. And this specific one said like, why repetition matters. And of course, she loves everything repeated, like songs and books, like handing the book back to me. Okay, do it again. And it's so funny because like she's firing all those up. She's like wanting to hear it over and over again, whatever it is. If I'm pointing to a thing and saying purple and she says purple, like, it's because it's been said so many times. We're the same. We're just babies.
Yeah, exactly. They're just better at it because their subconscious is so raw. It's like soaking everything up. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, because then you get to high school and you're like, I don't want to repeat this study guide like 4 more times, but I know that's going to help me. One thing I want to ask you about, you told us briefly about your journey and how you got to doing this, which we talk about people's stories all the time, and I think like we almost like didn't spend enough time on that because just this topic is so interesting in itself. And I'm wondering if there's any part of your story and your path to getting to being a manifestation coach that like, I don't know, that something else that sticks out to you that you wanted to share about it, that we didn't get to.
I think I kind of mentioned this, but I didn't go into it as much. The, I would say the beginning phases, right, of playing with manifestation is not easy. And I think that's kind of what steers people away because before I hired a coach, the reason I got to the point of needing a coach is because I was so discouraged. But I wanted to keep trying. It was just really hard because I was doing these methods that one didn't work for me or my personality. Two, I had a lot of trauma that was keeping me stuck in these cycles and in these patterns and in this point of disbelief and just not being able to believe in anything because that's what I was told as a child. There were a lot of different aspects that were really playing into why manifestation wasn't working for me. And I hear that a lot from my clients. So this is just why I can't recommend enough, like finding a coach or just asking somebody who's really successful at manifestation, what did you do? How did you get here? Because whether you know it or not, manifestation is always working for you or it's working against you. And it's just super important to get over that hump of the disbelief and it's not working. Because once you find what does work, that's when things really start to take off for you.
Do you think there are parts of people that are either embarrassed or they're just like nervous to talk about working with a manifestation coach, like with their peers or with their family or friends?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's still a very, I don't want to say like a new age topic, but it's still like there's not enough on it in the mainstream media to show like how legitimate it is and how related to science it is. So that kind of steers people away. And then also, what I find with my clients is sometimes it's really hard for them to accept that they do have trauma, that they do have flaws, because, as society, we're really pressured to not talk about our issues. We're pressured to think you just have to get over it and just keep going on with your life. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. Like if you're not getting help for, the trauma that you have, and everybody has it, I don't care what you say, or, whatever issues you have, those things are going to affect your life in a very subconscious way.
I totally believe that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the reasons that I think, not that I won't call myself a skeptic about it, but I think where I have some frustration around the way that it's portrayed and the way that I see other people interpret it is it almost, the idea of manifesting almost seems like so surface level or so simplistic. And I know we had Catherine and I were kind of, when we were thinking about questions to ask you, like, what's the difference between manifesting and like hoping and wishing for something? And I think sometimes I find people kind of fall into not fully understanding what manifesting is. They kind of fall into this trap of like, oh, I'm just going to manifest this and put it out there and then expect that it will come to me. But I guess one of my biggest takeaways from our conversation is how much like almost foundational work needs to be done, and internal work needs to be done in order for you to manifest kind of the life or the situation that you want. That it's not just like, oh, I want, Catherine, to use your example, like, oh, I want to live in a beautiful house, and like I said it, it's out there, and that's all I need to do. That there are these steps and this deep work that needs to be done in order to kind of have that part of your life or have that life.
Yeah, so something I will always, always preach, and because I figured it out the hard way, is that everything you do, whether it's professionally or personally, everything is an 80-20 rule. It's 80% mindset, 80% doing the work, right? Clearing the blocks, doing the techniques, detaching, getting yourself mentally prepared. And it's 20% strategy. So that 20%, of course, it matters. And of course, the mental part of it is more important, but that 20% is the faithful action steps that you're taking. right? Again, back to your example, Catherine, you really wanted this amazing house, you were thinking about it, but once you got over the excitement and just being like, okay, if it happens, it happens, you did take the steps of looking for a house, you did take the steps of making sure you have all the documents ready to purchase, all of those fun things, right? You did that with, I would say, a very strong faith, like an undeniable faith, like I'm putting it out there, it's going to happen, if not whatever, it'll happen when it's ready. Those steps are super important, but just as important as the mental aspect. You can't just have wishful thinking and just assume that it's going to fall into your hands, because that's just not realistic. But
Mhm.
yeah, like you said, I mean, it really, the mainstream media really downplays that part, and I feel like that's where people kind of fall off, because they're like, that just, it doesn't make sense to just think about something and it show up.
Right. Or it didn't work for me because I
Mm-hmm.
thought, and like that alone didn't bring it to me. So
Yeah.
I think, so it sounds like one thing that you would suggest to our listeners is to watch The Secret or read The Secret, maybe.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's not a play by play, but it is
Mhm.
a very good start.
Yeah. I remember reading The Secret years ago, like probably like over 10 years ago. And it really was, it was one of those books that after I read it, I like sat with it for a while and was like, damn, like this,
Hmm.
this is really, really something.
Yeah.
Are there any other things that you would suggest to someone that's curious about kind of starting manifesting, like ways that they can get started, or things that might be helpful for them to watch or read to learn more about?
Yeah. So there is a slew of information out there right now, right? I mean, I can't even count like the multiple different things on YouTube and Google and all of that. So it's just very important to do your research. Of course, you have the internet, there's free information everywhere, but just take everything with a grain of salt and take what applies and get rid of, whatever
Mm.
doesn't. Just make sure you're getting the right information. You can start on YouTube, just type in how to manifest, and you'll see all of these things come up. Just again, be very careful with the information that you do take, and make sure like everything is making sense and people are mentioning the things we talked about, like
Mm.
taking action, having that faith, detaching from it, how trauma comes into it. All of those things are super important, and I feel like if you keep that in mind, you can totally figure it out in the beginning.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, check your sources. Wait, I'm
Hmm.
sorry. I have to ask you about one more thing because you mentioned kind of like social media in a sense. Lucky girl syndrome.
Okay. This is a good one. I was talking to my client about this yesterday. So, and I love TikTok, don't get me wrong. When I have my downtime, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be all over it. That's something that's all over my For You page because of what I do. But I wouldn't say don't follow it or don't believe it. Just tread very carefully, because it's it's so hard to use the lucky girl syndrome, right? If when you were growing up, let's say your parents instilled a belief in your head that you have to work very, very hard to get anything that you want in this life. Lucky girl syndrome is not going to work for you. And I'm not trying to, be negative or give you that disbelief power, whatever, but it's just the facts, because you have this trauma, you have this repetitive thing that's in your subconscious, and it's just not going to work. It's super fun to play with, don't get me wrong. It's super great to have little things happen, and you can have that mindset of, oh, I'm the luckiest girl in the world. It is helpful, but it's just a very, very small piece of the pie when it comes to manifesting.
Yeah. Right. And it sounds like what you're saying, like, and I think a big criticism of it is that it really applies to like a very narrow part of the population in a sense.
Yeah.
So interesting. Okay. Glad I got your TikTok take. Okay. I think I've exhausted all of my stupid questions.
Bianca, where can our listeners find you on the internet, on social media?
Yeah, the best place is going to be to go to my website, biancalysette.com.
Okay. Great. And we'll make sure
Fantastic.
to put that in our show notes. Thank you so much, Bianca, for sharing so much information with us, and so much insight. I feel like I learned so much, from, an hour of talking to you. So I really, really appreciate the time and the like very thorough and thoughtful explanation of everything. You clearly know your stuff.
Yeah, thank you both so much for having me. It's been great.
Of course.
Yeah,
Thank you again, Bianca, so much for being here. And thank all of you for following along with us, for your ratings, your reviews, following us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We love that. We love hearing from you. We love any feedback from you. So thank you in advance for all of that. Please also be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Wishing You Well by Revive Center for Wellness, where you can watch our episodes in full video form over there. You can also follow us on Instagram at Wishing You Well Pod. You can follow Catherine at Catherine Van Eyck, me at Amy Albero LCSW. You can follow Revive at Revive CFW and visit our website, revivecfw.com. Please send any questions, guest ideas, suggestions, feedback to wishingyouwell at revivecfw.com. And we will be back next week with more. Until then, we are wishing you well.